bell hooks. One of the best guides of how to be self-loving is to give ourselves the love we're often dreaming or reaching for from others. There was a time when I felt lousy about my over 40 body, saw myself as too fat, too this or too that. Yet I fantasized about finding a lover who would give me the gift of being loved as I am. It is silly, isn't it, that I would dream of someone else offering me the acceptance and affirmation I was withholding from myself? This was a moment when the maxim, you cannot never love anybody if you're unable to love yourself, made clear sense. And I add, do not expect to receive the love from someone else that you do not give yourself. We will now begin our morning worship. It's so good to be here together, and I'm sad that the recordings for the last 2 weeks didn't work. I know we are recording today, and I apologize to those people who wanted live stream because it's not happening, and I don't know why. I can figure it out someday. Or maybe find someone else. There are lots of announcements. Meditations have started back up again at 8 o'clock. You're all welcome to join. Also, we have Wednesday. Wednesday? No, it's Thursday. Thursday, 5 to 6, Readers and Writers Workshop. So if you enjoy literature or poetry, you can join us for that Zoom session. And there's another concert coming up, and Jeff Technell has some information about last week's concert.
I want to thank all our parishioners who attended the Doppelgangers concert on Friday night, and I especially want to thank Jeff Hutton, Carol Hutton, Sue Mike, Miriam Davis, Leah Getcha, Debbie Harrison, Grace, and Rali for pitching in to make sure that the concert went well. We had good refreshments, and people had a very entertaining time. We had 67 people on Friday night. They came from lots of different mailing lists, apparently. So folks had seen the ads in the patch, and also in the Times, and we took in about $150 after expenses, which will be split with First Church and the UNESCO Fund for Ukraine and refugees. So thanks again for everybody.
Now begin our morning worship.
rising, bright morning stars are rising, bright morning stars are rising. Day is breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? Oh, where are our dear mothers? It is all breaking in my soul. They are sowing seeds of gladness. They are sowing seeds of gladness. They are sowing seeds of gladness. It is all breaking in my soul. Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? Oh, where are our dear fathers? There is a breaking in my soul. They are in the fields of plowing. They are in the fields of plowing. They are in the fields of plowing. It is all breaking in my soul.
Our opening words are by Judy Chicago, And then all that divided us will merge, and then compassion will be wedded to power, and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then both men and women will be gentle, and both women and men will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and free and merry. And then greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish, and all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with one another and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. It does feel a bit ironic to read those words as people are struggling in Ukraine and struggling in all parts of the earth for freedom and liberty. So I light our chalice for all struggles for freedom and liberty, that our hearts go with them and stay with them in the fight for freedom. And I light our green sanctuary candle for all the ways we strive to be a more sustainable congregation. I invite you now to sing with me hymn number 359 in your gray hymnal, or printed in the large print order of service. Hymn number 359, When We Are Gathered. Please remain standing and say with me the unison affirmation as is written in your ordered service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, to serve humanity in love is our covenant with each other and with God. You may be seated. I would like to invite our children forward. We haven't done that in a long time, but I think today's the day. So come on up. Hey! So good to see everybody. So good to see everybody. We're going to ring a different bell today, but I do need a line leader. I know none of you have been a line leader, but I think you raised your hand first, PJ, so you're the line leader. Right? Okay, SpongeBob, check. You can leave behind him. Yes. You can be the second. All right. Today, how many of you heard this story before, The Princess Boy? A bunch of you. It's been around for a while, but it's about something I want to talk about today, which is, sometimes people try to shape you in a certain way. Have you guys ever felt that? They shape you different than you feel like you are inside? Has that happened to you yet? I hope not. Because you're Unitarians. So don't your parents are letting you grow up just as you must and be yourself. I think that probably happens to Unitarian kids. But I grew up Methodist. And in the Methodist church, they wanted you to be a certain kind of girl, be a certain kind of way. And that was hard for me as a kid. And so that's the same thing that happened to this boy. He's a princess boy. How does that sound to you, princess boy? Weird. Why does it sound weird? Because it's a boy and a princess, and sometimes we think princesses can only be girls, right? So let's listen to the story and see what we find out, okay? My princess boy is 4. Well, they didn't put this in, we can imagine the face. My princess boy is 4 years old, and he likes pretty things. He likes his favorite color. He plays dress up in girly dresses. He dances like a beautiful ballerina. My princess boy has a cool brother. His brother plays baseball and soccer, and his brother dances with my princess boy. My princess boy loves his brother. My princess boy loves his dad. His dad tells my princess boy how pretty he looks in a dress. His dad holds his hand and tells him to do a twirl. My princess boy smiles and hugs his dad. My princess boy has play dates with boys and girls. He likes to climb trees in his princess boy tiara crown. When he plays dress up, he likes to change clothes a lot. He wears a green ballet leotard, and dances with his friends. I love my princess boy. When we go shopping, he is the happiest. when looking at girls, he is the happiest when looking at girls' clothes. But when he says he wants to buy a pink bag or a sparkly dress, people stare at him. And when he buys girly things, they laugh at him. And then they laugh at me, and it hurts us both. Once my princess boy wore a dress at his birthday party. He welcomed his friends to his home, and he said, "I am a princess boy." He put on jewelry, and he liked how pretty he looked, and he waved his princess boy wand. And then my princess boy was a princess for Halloween. He went trick-or-treating with his brother. One woman laughed at him because he was in a princess dress. My princess boy asked, "Why did she laugh at me?" I told him some people don't think boys should wear dresses. But a princess boy can wear a dress at his school, and I will not laugh at him. And a princess boy can wear a pink, and I will not. Will tell him how pretty he looks. And a princess boy can play with me in pretty girl clothes, and I will still play with him. If you see a princess boy, will you laugh at him? Will you call him a name? Will you play with him? Will you like him for who he is? Our princess boy is happy because we love him for who he is. My princess boy is your princess boy. So it is sort of silly to think about a boy who's a princess, but why do we think that's silly, you know? It's because we've been taught that boys are supposed to be one thing and girls are supposed to be another. But you know what? That's not true. You can be anything you want, whatever feels good to you. Sometimes boys like to bake and sew dresses and costumes. And sometimes girls like to garden and move big rocks. Everybody likes what they like. And you know what? You are loved for who you are, no matter what anybody thinks of you. By your parents and by this church. And probably by everyone you meet. So I just want you to think about that as we sing into your classes. BJ? I invite you into a time of prayer or meditation, as is your practice. We begin by breathing in peace and breathing out love. words are from the book You Are the One You've Been Waiting For by Richard C. Schwartz. Since the 60s, the traditional ways of being men and women have been challenged, creating confusion and contradictions for both genders. Now, men are still expected to be strong and high-achieving in the outside world, but within their relationship, they should be emotionally intelligent, in touch with and open with their feelings, and nurturing to their partner's feelings. They're internal protectors. They were raised to count on rational, impatient, action-oriented, problem-solving, and entitled, macho objectifiers are often no longer welcome at home. In this way, men are expected to perform a total reversal of their entrenched inner systems. Suddenly, they are supposed to access the very same vulnerable, sensitive, and caring parts they spent their lives trying to keep locked up. Simultaneously, they are expected to exile some of their most trusted protectors. To further confuse things, they need to remain close to the striving, competitive protectors to help them succeed and make lots of money, but not bring those things, parties to the relationship. Women, on the other hand, face their own quandaries as gender expectations shifted. In the post-60s world, they were expected to shed their inner, subservient, and self-sacrificing selves and find their power. The assertive and ambitious parts they had exiled earlier. Within their marriages, this often meant letting their husbands know of their needs for emotional connection and nourishment, and expecting more equality in decision-making and greater access to resources. The problem is that, similar to men, women were trying to achieve a reversal of entrenched inner systems without knowing how.
Thank you.
Hurts, A Feminist Analysis of Politics and Transgenderism by Sheila Jeffries. The most important aspect of queer theory for the development of the transgender movement was the theorizing of gender. While feminists had sought to use gender in ways that suited their revolutionary purposes and aimed to demolish gender differences, the queer approach was much less radical and paved the way for transgenderism to be seen as an emblematic practice of queer politics. Queer theory developed as a subset of postmodern theory and was devoted from the outset to a form of deconstructionism that disappeared the category of woman itself. Without woman, feminism cannot exist. Since feminism is a political movement for the liberation of a specific category of oppressed persons, and the disappearance of woman renders feminism superfluous, woman was not a concern of queer politics, and gender displaced any consideration of the fleshy reality of women's existence. Queer theory created a gender politics which reduced gender to a form of personal expression or performance, and obscured the material power relations of male domination. The aim of queer gender politics was to make gender flexible and create more genders. In these ways, queer theory was in direct opposition to feminist politics and enabled the development of transgenderism as a practice and ideology. I invite you to sing with me hymn number 212, We Are Dancing Sarah's Circle 212. late 60s, the roles of and work of family of women and men in the United States has been shifting dramatically with little or no fanfare. Throughout the world, however, most women work continues to be undervalued and underpaid. According to the UN, throughout the world, the gender pay gap and unemployment rate of women has only risen during the COVID crisis. While I'm aware that the amount of misogynist behavior that I've experienced in my lifetime pales by comparison of what my mother and grandmother experienced, when I consider the plight of women worldwide, I know that nothing under the sun has really changed. In other words, there is not much dancing between the matriarchy and the patriarchy in our world today. I don't believe it can be stressed too often that around the world, it's supported by many religious tenets, women's lives have been diminished for centuries. And for very many women around the globe, very little has changed. Let us just take a moment to let that sink in. Women's lives have been diminished since the beginning of time. And despite voting rights and UN proclamations, despite brilliant female politicians and authors and practitioners, women in many parts of the world continue to have their lives diminished by people in power over which they have little influence or control. There can be no dance when one partner overpowers another. For there to be a dance, both partners need to be in a flexible and reciprocal relationship. Just to be clear, in this sermon I'm using dancing as a metaphor. You can imagine dancing eyes or dancing in your heart, if that makes more sense to you. If you've ever attended or watched a recording of the women's marches in recent years, you probably heard women chanting something to the effect of, "What do we want? Women in power. When do we want it now?" Of course, after more than a millennia of oppression, it is natural for women to want to be in power. But is power going to make the situation better? That's the question I want us to consider today. Will power grabbing ever lead us to a dance? To be quite honest, there are times I long for more time in the sun. I want to be the top of the heap and make all the decisions and change the world. Who doesn't? Maybe there are some people who don't, but I don't know any of them. Following the publication of the Commission on Institutional Change in the UUA has been working to dismantle white supremacy using widening our circle of concern as a guide. I, along with many of my colleagues, have been disheartened by the loss of many of the ages-old valued traditions. For example, the 25 and 50-year ministry speakers at General Assembly have been discontinued. These were done away with because they're considered popularity contests and as such part of white supremacist culture, and not wisdom awards as they were intended to be originally, I think. In many respects, I agree with this thinking. However, I still secretly wanted to win the popularity contest one day. I wanted my place in the sun. I did just come back from Costa Rica, so I did have some time in the sun. I imagine this is the same normal human urge that much of the white backlash against black power empowerment is based on. Being concerned with the status quo in the face of change. Wanting things to always stay the same so we can have our turn is something that only those with privilege and participating in the existing systems can do. Those without privilege generally do not risk change, because change is generally the best path toward equality. I hope you've all seen the cartoon that illustrates the difference between equity and equality. Just in case you haven't, I'll try to describe it to you. There are three people in graduating sizes standing beside a fence. In the first frame, they're all standing in front of a fence that's the same height, and of course the shortest person can't see, person maybe can see just a tiny bit through a crack or up over the top, and the third person can see everything. And the second, that's called equality. That's equality. Equity is when the shortest person has a block high enough to stand on so his head is over the fence. The second has a block that's a little bit shorter but still can help him see the head over the fence. And the third person is standing on the ground and can see over the fence. That is equity. Equity is everybody has what they need to survive. Everybody has what they need. Equity gives everyone what they need to thrive or even dance. Truth be told, you cannot dance with a partner and do a solo dance at the same time. Believe me, I've tried. Neither can two people take the lead at the same time. We met a lovely man on our vacation who was the life of the party, and he went around to each of us and asked us to dance to a band that was playing. When he got to me, he couldn't dance with me very long because he said I danced way too fast. And later, when I told this to my family, they not only laughed at me, but they told me that I had no rhythm. And this got me thinking that dancing takes a great deal more than being just a leader or a follower. It takes rhythm and timing and collaboration. We can create a taking turns kind of dance in organizations and churches when leadership rotates and staggers year to year. Rotating leadership, setting term limits, and intentionally inviting new people is a way to keep an institution alive and thriving. Rotating leadership allows more of a dance than what is available when one holds power year after year after year. Even with term limits and rotating leadership, occasionally there's a person who does not play well with others, a person who tries to control everything. Even when dealing with difficult people, we have to hold to our values and our purposes. We can often call people back to covenantal relationship when we remind them of that. The problem becomes if one dominant person is met with passivity. Dominance wins every time. What every dance partner needs is a receptive dance partner, whether they are leading or following, one who collaborates in the dance with rhythm and timing and speed. In all of the churches I have served in my early ministry, I would offer a dealing with difficult people class. I did this in part because I was a teacher for children with behavioral impairments before I became a minister, and I felt it was my best area of expertise. But every time I taught this class, no matter whether it was on the West Coast or the East Coast, it doesn't matter, what surprised me was that inevitably there would be one person who would come once we started to talk about the difference between passive, aggressive, and assertive behavior, and they would get very upset with me. For those of you who've never heard of these terms, passive communication is basically when you listen without really paying attention and you just try to stay calm in the midst of whatever's going on. Aggressive communication is basically when you interrupt, disrupt, rather than listen to someone. And assertive communication is generally when you listen and respond by telling a person exactly what you think they're feeling. But you're listening to them, and you're really hearing them, and you're responding to what they're saying, but you're not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing while they're talking. You're actually listening. It's a hard thing to do sometimes when someone's mad at you. I'm not always good at it, and I've had lots of practice. Well, whenever I would get to that lesson where we would talk and practice about this, one of the aggressive students would either interrupt me or talk to me after class to tell me that they really didn't want their spouse telling them how they feel or explain to them what bothers them. To these men, and I'm sorry to say it was always men, the idea of having a female friend or coworker or wife tell them how they were really feeling instead of passively accepting whatever they threw their way made them uncomfortable. After reading Richard Schwartz's book, which I highly recommend to all of you, in fact, I might start a reading group on it, I realized that these men were reacting so strongly to my suggestion because men in our culture have been encouraged to tamper down all their feelings and express only strength. To have a spouse or a coworker always telling you how you feel, you have to unconsciously have been conditioned to keep your feelings from coming out. That can be very irritating. This is where I think the metaphor of dance is particularly useful. When two people dance together, both need to hold their form and respond to each other so that they don't end up stepping on each other's feet. Why would we need any less balanced responsiveness when between partners in any other form of communication if we do that in dance? This, however, is not easy when we teach men and boys to hide their feelings and women and girls to placate their feelings. That's what we teach. And to this understanding, all that we have learned from the growing voices of the transgender, non-binary communication, most importantly for the discussion, is that gender is at its core a form of self-expression. When I was in seminary, my sexual ethics professor, the Reverend Marvin Ellison, took out 4 sets of dice. On 4 sides, he'd written she, he, they, X. The remaining 2 had question marks for questioning. He would have us roll the 4 dice and then have us describe the configuration from left to right. The dice reflected the sex you were born with, the gender you identify with. If these are the same, that's the term cisgender. That's cisgender. The next side of the dice represents the pronoun or preference of the dice for the one to whom you're attracted. For example, if I rolled a she, it would mean I was born a woman, identified as a woman, making me cisgender, preferring the feminine pronouns of she, her, and then attracted to women. It takes only a few rolls of the dice to begin to realize how many variations there can be to our sexual orientation, sexual expression, sexual attraction, and gender identification. When we add to that the gender we identify with is an expression of our humanness and is not an absolutely binary biology determined factor, then the metaphoric dance we can do can be even more flexible and nuanced. And the matriarchy and patriarchy have less hold on our expectations of ourselves and others. The thing is, you cannot even play a song with just one note. If there were 2 notes, the way there used to be with chords and ones for coders, then all the music could be created would be very limited. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. In the same way, but with just a few more notes, you can play hundreds of tunes. In the same way that a chef with only 2 ingredients can only do so much. But with a new ingredient, at least 3, can do so much. If cisgender males and cisgender females stay wedded to the binary masculine and feminine roles and expectations, if they're set in stone, we will always end up in the battle for power on the dance floor or standing still. If cisgender people like me really understood that masculinity and femininity is simply expression of the self, instead of holding to it as if it were some eternal law of nature, aren't we passively accepting the status quo? Have you ever tried to dance or do anything with a passive partner? Have you learned the passive resistance that Gandhi recommended? To To go limp in the police officer's arms when they're arresting you? Imagine your dance partner goes limp when they're dancing with you. Dancing with a partner that is a wet noodle is as difficult as dancing with someone who aggressively pushes their partner around the floor. To dance together, we need both partners paying attention to each other. I believe when any group has been kept from the dance floor of life for too long, they naturally want to find their place on the floor. And if a group fears losing their place as lead on the dance floor, they may naturally want to aggressively hold on to their lead. If we are ever going to have a smooth, beautiful dance between the matriarchy and the patriarchy, we're going to have to put aside our innate desire to do a solo dance and take turns in the lead and following, realizing there are more than just two gender expressions that need their turn on the floor. I'm not sure how we get a giant globalized corporation to start being accountable to the smaller, disenfranchised constituencies. What I do know is what Bill Hooks points to in our centering thought, and what Judy Chicago points to in our opening words, and what Richard Schwartz points to in his book. If we want equality, we have to start here in our relationships with first ourselves, and then those close to us in our family and our friends, in this church and in our home communities, and find ways to dance so that everyone has an opportunity to lead. I invite you to sing with me our final song, Let It Be a Dance We Do. 311. Let us fix our steps so we stagger not in the uneven motions of this world, but go steadily on our way. aside